Welcome inside the War Room. I'm your host, Andrew Valancourt, and we're back today for episode 63 of the Dynasty War Room podcast. On today's show, we're going to break down some trades that went down across all of my leagues here in the month of May. Rookie draft season, so a lot of these trades are involving rookie picks and players that were taken either during the draft. We have some trades from right before, right after, during. We've everything included in this episode today, so lots of fun trades here. We got 10 of them that we're going to talk about. And before we do that, though, make sure you are following this podcast on your platform of choice. We're on everything out there, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, you name it, we're there. So go give us a follow so you don't miss any future shows. You can leave us a 5-star review on any of those platforms. That is very helpful to the show. It helps us grow and is very much appreciated. And go find us on social media. We're on Twitter or X at Dynasty War Room. You can find our YouTube channel at the same handle. We have a Facebook page, and you can find me on Blue Sky in addition to Twitter at Andrew Vcourt. So we hope you go follow along there and ask us some fantasy football questions. And we have a partnership that I want to talk to you about quickly before we jump into these trades. And I want to tell you about Fast Draft. It's a new best ball app. It's a very quick, fun way to draft, and it takes some of the grind out of fantasy football. And Fast Draft is giving away over $250,000 in prizes this year. They have all sorts of different tournaments. They have all rookie formats, all flex tournaments, all defense tournaments. It's all sorts of different tournaments that you can play. The drafts are fast. They're, of course, given the name, they're only 20 seconds per pick. You can get through one of these drafts in just about 5 minutes. So you can do them anywhere, anytime during the day. Sign up with code WARROOM, and Fast Draft will double your first deposit up to $50. That can give you $100 to play with upon your first deposit. And there are drafts that are only a couple bucks, and they range in price depending on what you want to go into there. So lots of different options, and all you have to do is use code WARROOM to double your first deposit, and you can get through a draft anywhere, anytime. And they're in about 35 states right now, working on others. So assuming your state is eligible, go ahead and use code WARROOM, and Fast Draft will double your first deposit up to $50. All right, so 10 trades that I want to discuss today, and all of these are trades that actually happened from leagues that I am in myself. A couple of them are leagues that I commission. A couple of them are leagues where I am just another manager. At least one of these is a trade that I did. In fact, our very first trade is going to be a trade that I pulled off. And the rest are going to be trades from league mates that I thought were interesting and wanted to discuss on today's show. So, first off, our first trade is going to be Team 1 received Caleb Williams and a 2026 third-round pick in exchange for Matthew Stafford, a 26 first-round pick, and a 26 second-round pick. And I was involved in this trade, and for each of these moves, I also ran a Twitter poll on the Dynasty War Room Twitter account. That's our handle, at Dynasty War Room. And so go follow along if you want to vote in any of these future polls that we do on trades. And 67% to 33% favored the Caleb Williams side of this deal. And fortunately for me, I am the manager that acquired Caleb Williams in this trade, and I have a team in this league that is very competitive outside of the quarterback position. I was loaded up at running back, receiver, tight end, and I had names like I have Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, Puka Nacua, Nico Collins, Sam Laporta, Chase Brown. It's a very good lineup, except for the quarterback position, where I was entering the season at this point with Stafford, Anthony Richardson, and Bryce Young. I decided that was not going to be good enough for me this year. I'm not sure that I believe in both of Richardson and Bryce Young. I think one of them, probably Richardson, likely to lose out on their job at some point during this season. So I decided that it was a good time to take Matthew Stafford and some draft capital, see if I could make a move for someone younger with some potential. And the manager with Caleb Williams had taken over this team as an orphan, did not draft him, was not necessarily a huge fan, and wanted to reset, get some more draft capital, and but still have a quarterback to keep his team middle of the pack as well. So this is what we were able to get done. I am thrilled with this trade. I, of course, would prefer the Williams side, given that I'm the one that made this move. And I think it worked out pretty well for me. And I think it shows you that right now there is a window to buy Caleb Williams because there is some risk. We took a ton of sacks. It's a new coaching staff offense. We assume that it's going to be good, but you never know. And if the manager is a little bit scared of the situation, I think you can go in and this is probably about the lowest price that you will be able to get Caleb Williams for, assuming he takes off and becomes a long-term franchise quarterback for the Bears. I do think there is some definite risk. I am a little bit concerned about his inability to avoid sacks. He didn't have a great rookie season, but I'm buying into the hype with the new coaching staff. Hopefully Ben Johnson and company are able to fix Caleb Williams a bit from his rookie season. And for what I paid, I think it is certainly worth the risk. And that is why I would prefer the Caleb Williams side. All right, so moving on to trades that I did not do myself. And sometimes these are a little bit more fun to talk about because I'm not involved, so I can be a little bit more objective. And so this trade comes from my home Dynasty league. It's a very competitive league, and we have a trade between two contenders, and team number 1 received the 102 in our rookie draft, which at this point had already been selected. It was Amari and Hampton, and both sides knew that this was going to be the case. The manager that received this pick wanted Amari and Hampton. So the 102 for Amari and Hampton, and a 2026 first-round pick, which is probably going to be somewhere in the 3 to 6 range of the draft. So early to mid first-round pick. And although always tough to predict, you never know what can happen. It could turn out to be the 101. It could turn out to be the 109. You just don't know how things shake out. But I think a early mid first-round projection there, I think makes some sense. It's coming from the team that was in the 102 spot for this draft. So I think there is some improvements definitely going to happen to that team, but still, that's how I want to value that pick there as a mid, potentially early first-round pick. And then the other side of this deal received the 109, the 110, the 207, the 208, and the 209. So a bunch of draft capital in exchange for Amari and Hampton and a 26 first-round pick. And those picks in our rookie draft had not been completed at the time of this trade, which is why I want to just present this as the picks themselves. Now, for context, the defending champion is the team that received these 5 picks, and he also had the 101 through a previous trade. So he had already taken Ashton Genty, did not want to have Hampton and Genty. He wanted the draft haul. So he ended up selecting Jackson Dart and Caleb Williams at 9 and 10. And then he used those second-round picks to maneuver around, make some additional trades. He ended up with Jaden Higgins, and then made some other moves as well. And we're actually going to talk about those. So this was a pretty interesting trade. It's obviously a big... there's some gambling here with Amari and Hampton, but you also get the future first-round pick, and it's something where part of this could come down to how you felt about that 207 to 209 range in rookie drafts. I happen to be a pretty big fan of Byshell Tootin and Scatabo, and we're talking Jaden Higgins territory a little bit. And then, you probably have one more pick there with the 209 where you're looking at somebody like a Mason Taylor or a Kyle Williams or Jalen Knoll or something along those lines. But I do prefer the 102 and future first-round pick side in this, largely because I am a Hampton believer. He was my 102 overall in my rankings, and the team that received this end of the deal was had tons of draft capital. They needed a high-end running back, and they're able to pick up a future first-round pick in the process. But I understand the move from both sides here. However, Twitter does agree with my opinion here. 79% of voters favored the 102 side for Amari Hampton, and that's how I see it as well. I just think you get the higher upside. You're getting that future first to kind of help offset all those other picks that you're giving up. And I do like Caleb Johnson. I would not have taken Jackson Dart inside the top 10, but quarterback needy team, you kind of understand it a bit. And but given my love for Amari Hampton, I'm going to side with that part of the trade. Moving on to trade number 3, which also involves one of these same managers. So just for some added context, the manager that got the 5 picks in our previous trade, who was the defending champion in my home league, he's a total trader. He is always on the move with picks and players and shuffling things around, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. It bit him a bit the first couple years of the league, but it all paid off with the championship in year 3, so you can't argue with the results. But he gave us a lot of content today, so I appreciate that because he was very active during our draft, both during, after, and before. And so while he made that trading away Amari Hampton during the draft, right before our league draft, he traded away Brian Thomas, Jordan Addison, and a 26th third-round pick in return for the 103, 106, 206, and 302. So clearly, this manager wanted to get back in the draft in a big way, ended up with all sorts of picks. He ended up using the 103 from this trade to acquire the 102 in our previous trade. So lots of wheeling and dealing. And this was an interesting move because the team that gave up all that draft capital was a rebuilding team. They're starting to be on the up and up, probably a year away at this point, but definitely making the moves to where you could see this team fighting for a playoff spot this year. They get a nice young receiver core now, and I think you could see this as a strong contending roster a year from now. And so they felt that getting guys like Brian Thomas, Jordan Addison, a nice piece added in here was worth it. And I do agree. While I like the package, of picks, of course, 103, 106 is a nice haul here. That's in my rankings, that would end up being Travis Hunter and Travion Henderson. In this draft, those two players, that's not what happened with these picks, given all the various trades that happened after the fact. But I do prefer the Brian Thomas side. I think he's an elite wide receiver. Jordan Addison is a very solid flex receiver to have on your roster. And given the uncertainty with some of the rookies, I'm not all that concerned with the second and third round pick in this trade. I think the 206 is a nice add-in. It helps make this a bit more palatable for me. But you're getting 2 elite rookies in exchange for an already elite wide receiver and then a very good flex receiver in Jordan Addison. But Brian Thomas, to me, is a top 10 Dynasty wide receiver right now. He's young. He had a huge rookie season. And so I do prefer that side of the trade, but I don't think this is lopsided by any means. Twitter agrees with me. 57% of voters favored the Brian Thomas side of this deal. And I think that's about right. Roughly, 6 out of 10 voters preferring the Brian Thomas side. I think that's very fair and makes sense. Trade number 4. We have another one from the home league. This one also involving the same manager that's been involved in the previous 2 trades. And unfortunately for him, I think he's going to be on the losing end of all 3 Twitter polls here involving his trades. And in this one, he sent away David Njoku, Alexander Madison, and then his newly drafted Jaden Higgins. So this trade was made just after our rookie draft concluded. And in return, he received Jaden Reed, Cade Otton, Keaton Mitchell, and a 2026 4th-round pick. And this one is rather easy for me. I do absolutely prefer the Njoku Higgins side of this trade. We talked last week about my sells, and it was actually pretty funny because this trade went down in our league a few hours after I had recorded last week's episode. It had not been released yet, but I'd already recorded, saw this trade go through in our league, had a good laugh about it, just funny to see some of these names that we talked about because I had both Jaden Reed and Cade Otton as sells on last week's show. So if you want to hear the reasons for that, go back, check out that episode. But I like Jaden Higgins. I think he's in a really solid position to be the number 2 in Houston. It's a very good fit for him. David Njoku is still a solid tight end. I don't think he's at the point in his career where he's going to necessarily be a top 5 guy, but certainly a top 12 startable every week option at tight end. And then you got the Alexander Mattison throw in, who could fight for some backup yardage in the Miami backfield. But on the other side, I prefer Njoku to Cade Otton. I think Otton is a solid backup option for your lineup, but I think we talked about how he really needs Evans and or Godwin at a minimum, one of the two, if not both, to be out to truly make an impact. Now, can he be a serviceable bye-week replacement as is? Sure, absolutely. But we talked about how he is a bit more of a replaceable player. Keaton Mitchell, I don't think is going to turn into anything, but balancing out the Madison, I think that's a fine 1-for-1. And then Jaden Reed, we talked about the fact that he's not a full-time wide receiver. I think he's very talented, he's efficient, but just isn't somebody that is leaving you happy on a week-to-week basis in your lineup. And I'll take the upside in Higgins with the added boost with Njoku over Jaden Reed in the 4th-round pick. I think that Higgins can turn into a more productive every week player. Certainly there's some risk here. I think Jaden Reed is probably a little bit of a safer player, of course, but if you look at last season, there were a lot of weeks where if you had him in your lineup, you just really were unhappy with the outcome. There's only a few games where you felt really good about it, including week 1, where he had that awesome, wide receiver 1 performance. But outside of that, it just wasn't that impressive. They drafted Matthew Golden, so Njoku's going to have to deal with the quarterback issues, but he's been going through that already, and he's been fine for fantasy. And so I prefer that side of the trade. And Twitter agrees, although close. So 53% of voters favored the David Njoku and Jaden Higgins side of this deal. So pretty fair trade according to Twitter, and that's how that one shakes out. All right, so moving on to the Dynasty War Room Listener League. We did have a huge trade go down this past week, and we are gearing up for our rookie draft, which is coming up at the end of this week. We had a little bit of a delayed draft here. We had some people on vacation, honeymoons, that sort of thing. So we're pushing our draft back to the end of this month. And so getting ready for that, we had a big trade go down between two teams that were pretty strong last year, but going in opposite directions as signaled by this trade. We have one side that has decided to enter into a rebuild, the other that is making a push to be a contender, and I think that both sides will certainly help accomplish this goal. And we have another trade that involves Brian Thomas. So a very popular trade target here in Brian Thomas. Multiple leagues, he's getting moved around. I think we even have one more still involving Brian Thomas. So in this trade, the team that is entering into a rebuild received Brian Thomas, a 2026 first-round pick projected to be mid to late, along with a 26 third-round pick and a 26 fourth-round pick. The other side of this trade, the team that is hoping to be a playoff contender and title contender, received Derrick Henry, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, George Kittle, and then a future third and fourth round pick early to mid in 2026. So this is a really interesting trade because these are huge names. I mean, George Kittle was a stud tight end last year. He's been a very good player for a long time. Tyreek Hill, of course, has previously been the wide receiver 1 and is an electric player. Derrick Henry just got a contract extension and was awesome last year in Baltimore. And then I really like the landing spot for Devontae Adams with the LA Rams. So I can understand the move here. Obviously, Brian Thomas and a first-round pick certainly help you get younger, help you set up for the future. So I do understand it from that perspective. But in a vacuum, I think I do like the collection of players better. Because I do think that you're going to get at least one more really good year out of all 4 guys. Now, I don't know if you're going to get 2 out of everyone, but there's at least a couple of these guys you might get 2 seasons from. So Derrick Henry, I think you got at least one, if not two. We got that contract extension. George Kittle got an extension. I think both of those guys should be good for the next 2 years. And then Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams, I don't know if you're going to get 2 years, but you should at least get one. And I really like the fit for Devontae Adams in LA. Still think he has a lot left in the tank. Tyreek Hill I'm a little bit more concerned about. But all in all, this certainly is a 4-pack of players across all 3 of these positions that should really, really help this team turn into a contender. And they're absolutely sacrificing some future benefit here with Brian Thomas in the first-round pick. But, just a third and fourth-round pick swap that actually probably favors the team getting the veterans, considering those picks will probably be a little bit earlier in the round. And so I completely understand it on both sides. I can certainly see why someone would prefer the Brian Thomas side, because I think if you're talking purely in a value vacuum here, we're just looking at, value of players. I think that Brian Thomas is certainly the best asset in this trade from a dynasty perspective, and getting a first-round pick on top is really nice. So I think it's a very fair trade. I like it a lot for both parties here. And Twitter favors the Brian Thomas side of this trade. 56% of voters favored Brian Thomas to the package of players. So it's a high-risk move for the team that is selling Brian Thomas to get the collection of veterans, because if 3 of those 4 fall off, or 2 of them really bust, anything short of the majority of these players having a really strong season, and he's going to feel a lot of regret. But it's, high risk, high reward, could be a really nice payoff for both sides in that deal. Trade number 6 involves a rookie. This happened post-draft. And we had Jordan Addison and a 2026 third-round pick being traded for Luther Burden, who went in the early second round of this draft. And it's an interesting move, because I actually think that Addison and Burden could turn out to be somewhat similar players from a stat perspective. But, getting the third-round pick on top is nice. And there is certainly less risk with Addison at this point. Burden is a bit buried on the depth chart. Who knows what could happen in terms of his rookie year stats? He could certainly turn into a superstar, which would obviously make this a great deal for that side. But Addison is the safer play. I still think he has a nice floor. I'm a J.J. McCarthy believer, and he's been very productive. So I prefer the Addison side, but I do think it's close, because I do really like Luther Burden. But if you would ask me prior to the draft, would you trade Jordan Addison for, the 203 or something along those lines? I don't think I would do that. And so from a process standpoint, I do favor Jordan Addison here, especially with the pick on top. And Twitter agrees. 69% of voters favor the Jordan Addison side of this deal. And that's how I see it as well. All right, so trade number 7. And this is a big one, and I think it's a very good trade, well thought out on both sides. And it's probably the one that I have the most difficult time deciding what side I prefer, although I do think that I agree with how Twitter voted on this one. So this trade, we have a contender that received Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jonathan Taylor, and Courtland Sutton, and then a team that is still solid, but a bit more on the bounce back, in a rebuilding path, acquired Brian Thomas, Xavier Worthy, and Byshell Tootin. So, the 3 younger players, guys entering their second year, and then Tootin, the rookie. And then you have the veteran side with St. Brown, Taylor, and Sutton. And I like this for both parties. I think it makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of upside with the younger players in this deal, between Worthy and Thomas, of course, already being a stud. And then Tootin I like a lot. But the other side of this deal, you already get the proven production. You're ready to go right away. You don't have to worry about what you're getting. You know that St. Brown is going to be a top 5, top 10 guy. You know that Jonathan Taylor should be a top 12 running back. I think we can have some conversations about what his future might look like past this year or two. A lot of it could depend on QB play. But Jonathan Taylor's still an RB1. And Courtland Sutton is a very solid flex-worthy wide receiver that, depending on your lineup, can either be a full-time starter or someone you plug in on bye weeks and injuries. and has a nice connection there with Bo Nix. So I do prefer the St. Brown side of this trade, but I thought it was definitely an interesting move. It's very rare that you see moves with this caliber of players on both sides of a deal. And so I thought it was a good one to bring up. And Twitter agrees. 58% of voters favor the Amon-Ra St. Brown side of this trade. But again, for a rebuilding team to acquire 3 very high upside younger players and move on from some veterans, I think that the rebuilding manager will feel very good about this trade in 2 seasons. And it will be up to the contending manager here to, he's got to make sure he can win a title here in the next 2 years to really make this trade pay off. But definitely a good move, I think, for both sides, and makes a lot of sense. And trade number 8. So we have a 1-for-1 involving a rookie pick, and this was the 110 for Kyren Williams. And this is a really interesting trade to me because I think Kyren Williams is one of the more difficult players to rank right now because we know he's not a very good athlete, but we know he's in a great system. The coaches love him. He gets a huge volume and a great workload. But they have been drafting running backs, Blake Corum last year, Jarquez Hunter this year in the middle rounds. And Williams is going to be up for a contract extension after this year or be a free agent. So we'll see what the team does. I don't know whether he will be re-signed or whether he'll hit the market. Certainly this trade would look a lot better for the Kyren side if he signs an extension. But as it stands right now, I actually think I prefer the 110, depending on who's there on the board. So one way to look at this is, if one of the tight ends were to fall to 110, this is a tight end premium super flex league. So a little bit more value with those tight ends in this draft. And if you can get a Loveland or a Warren at 110 in a Superflex tight end premium league, I would take those players over Kyren Williams. And so I would prefer that side of the deal. Where things get a little bit more tricky is if you're looking at either a Emeka Egbuka or a Caleb Johnson or an RJ Harvey. That's where things get tough because you probably know you're waiting a year on Emeka Egbuka. So if you're a rebuilding team, obviously you would prefer the 110. If you're a contending team, you'd probably like Kyren Williams. But from a running back perspective, just straight up, would you rather have Caleb Johnson, RJ Harvey, or Kyren Williams? And I think that is a really difficult question because Kyren Williams and RJ Harvey are the same age, but the contract situation is vastly different. And given that, and the fact that Caleb Johnson, given that this is the 110, he probably is still on the board, and he, in my rankings, is one spot ahead of RJ Harvey. I would rather have Caleb Johnson, and so I would take the 110. And I think it would depend on your team situation, but I would probably prefer Harvey as well. Second round draft capital is going to be the starter, you would assume. A little bit more risk, absolutely. So that's where it can depend on whether you're looking for a ceiling play or you want that more of a floor play in Kyren Williams. But I would prefer the 110, and this is actually a situation where I don't think Twitter agreed with me. Twitter went 75% in favor of the Kyren Williams side of this deal. So maybe that's a sign that I'm a little bit lower on Kyren Williams than consensus, so maybe I should be looking to move him in a deal. I would certainly... I think this is a fair offer, a fair trade on both sides. I'm a little bit surprised that it is so lopsided on the poll, but it's one of those things. Proven production versus the unknown rookie. Hard to say no to the proven production in a lot of cases, so I at least can understand it from that perspective. All right, trade number 9, and this is a huge trade. This is involving 2 teams that are completely rebuilding, probably going to be the teams that end up with the first and second pick in the draft in this league next year. Although both teams made some pretty good moves in the draft to where the team that traded away their star quarterback in this deal might end up actually in the middle of the pack, pushing for a playoff spot. So we'll see how things shake out. But both on the rebuilding side, particularly the team with the 101. And this trade happened on the clock in the rookie draft for the 101. And the team that traded away the first overall pick for Ashton Genty also traded away the 109 and a 2026 third-round pick. Again, that's projected to probably be the 301 or 302. And in return, he got Jaden Daniels, Washington quarterback, and it was a huge trade. Of course, anytime a top 3 QB in the league gets moved, the 101 gets moved, pretty monster deal. And I think this one made a ton of sense for the manager acquiring Jaden Daniels. His team is in really rough shape. He's in a full rebuild. Really was in a tough spot at quarterback. And taking Ashton Genty and then someone, like a Loveland, a Warren, a Judkins, whoever it is that was there at 109, probably wasn't going to be the best use of his resources to start a full rebuild. But using these picks to go out and get Jaden Daniels, I think, is a great move. Makes a ton of sense. And so I definitely prefer the Jaden Daniels side of this trade. However, from context does matter, and the manager with Jaden Daniels also has Josh Allen. They had a boatload of other first-round picks, and so they were able to sort of revamp their entire team and pick up a couple new running backs, a couple receivers, and they still have Josh Allen. So, definitely taking a hit at the QB position, but they're filling out more of their lineup, putting them in a better position to succeed sooner, even though they are giving up a massive piece in Jaden Daniels. But Twitter does favor the Jaden Daniels side as well. 74% of voters favored Jaden Daniels, and I think that makes sense. I probably would have been asking for a little bit more on top in order to move on from Daniels. So good trade for that manager getting Jaden Daniels. And our final trade of the day, our trade number 10, and this one is another trade that involved high-level rookie picks, but also some high-level receivers. And it came from the same league as before, actually, where the manager who traded away Jaden Daniels was on the receiving end of Chris Olave and the 105. And in return, he traded away Nico Collins, Jalen Warren, and the 304. So you can see what I mean by the manager that only had a couple high-level pieces and then nothing else on his roster, taking those players in Daniels and Collins and moving on from them, turning them into a bunch of draft capital. In this situation, he ended up with the 105, where I believe he took Travion Henderson and or it was Ted McMillan. He ended up, I think, with both players because he had multiple picks in this range. But then he gets Chris Olave as well. So I think this is a very fair trade because I do think that Collins is clearly the best player in this deal. Jalen Warren is a fine throw, and I don't think he's worth a whole lot. And then 304, a solid bench piece there, hopefully. But Chris Olave, I think, is a bit underrated right now, and I think he has a real shot to, just be a solid top 20 receiver for the next several seasons. I think the quarterback situation this year is obviously very rough. But he's the number one target there. And as long as he stays healthy, which is a huge caveat given his concussion history, that this could pay off in a huge way for that manager. So I like it from both sides. The other manager is going to have a chance to compete a little bit better right away with Nico Collins, gets a little bit of depth. But I think this is really fair, and I have a tough time actually going against the Olave 105 side, even though I think Nico Collins is a stud, top 10 receiver. So this is a toss-up for me. I would flip a coin. I think it's a true 50-50. I like both sides of the deal. And it truly would just depend on your team context. If you're a rebuilding team like the one is on this side that got Olave in the 105, I would favor that end. And if you're a contending team that got Nico Collins in this trade, I would favor that side of the trade. So it truly just depends where your team is at, what your situation is in terms of how I would choose in terms of the winner of this trade. But if we're talking just purely in a vacuum, I think I would maybe 51% lean Olave 105, but very, very close. And, I definitely like all the players involved, at least at the receiver position here. Twitter, 60% favored the Nico Collins side of this trade. So kind of pretty close to what I'm saying here with, a pretty fair trade, tough to pick on the side. But generally speaking, it's never bad way to go in siding with the highest value asset in a trade. And so that's what voters went with here. And that would be Nico Collins. So there you have it. There are 10 trades that went down in my various leagues this month, either during rookie drafts or right before or right after. None of these are from earlier on in the offseason. These are all pretty fresh, recent trades here that I thought would give you some good context and some ideas for your own leagues about things that you might be able to get done. Because sometimes you look at a trade and you go, oh, well, that side's clearly better. But you don't know what's available until you go out and ask. Start some conversations, slide in some DMs, send some offers. You can always start a conversation and see if something's on the table or available. And always be working to improve your rosters and see what you can get done out there. You might be surprised at who ends up being available and what type of deals that you can get done. All right, so there you have it. I hope everyone has a happy Memorial Day and enjoyed the holiday weekend. And we'll be back with more fantasy football next week, of course. And so I hope you tune back in. And one last reminder, download Fast Draft. It's on the App Store. It's a great mobile app. And use code WARROOM, and you can get you can get up to $50 matched on your first deposit. If you then use that deposit and play it through a draft, you'll get that deposit match. So check that out. For my Michigan listeners, it's not in Michigan yet, but keep it in mind if you ever go out of state. And then for all my non-Michigan listeners, go check it out. Go download the app and use code WARROOM, and I very much appreciate it. So that's all for today's show, and we will talk to you all next week. My name is Andrew Valancourt. You have been listening to the Dynasty War Room podcast.